everybody, and welcome to this spoiler review on this late Sunday night here. I just finished watching episode 10. Let's sit down and talk about everything that happened in my reactions and my review of everything, what I liked, what I didn't like. There wasn't much I didn't like, and what I enjoyed, and where I think we might be going here in season 2 of House of the Dragon. So much happening in this episode. The Black Queen. It is directed by Greg Yaitanis. I think Greg did a fantastic job directing this episode. You know, Miguel Sapochnik is the one that everyone turns to when they talk about great episodes for Game of Thrones episodes. And I thought this one was really well directed by Greg. I thought he really captured a lot of what we needed to see here as Rhaenyra goes on this journey when she gets all this terrible news at the beginning of the episode, navigates all of it until eventually she makes that turn from the fireplace in the last scene of the episode and has resolved herself to this civil war, and that she is now going to take full part in this civil war against her childhood friend and her childhood friend's son, who is sitting on the throne that should be hers, the Iron Throne, that is. Before I get too deep into this, though, I want to remind you all to please subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the content we do here on the Outlaw Nation channel. Head on over to Twitch, follow us there as well on Twitch, the Outlaw Nation, all one word, and the Patreon, patreon.com/John Rocha. Also, just reiterating, this is a spoiler review, so if you haven't watched the episode, now's the time to stop and turn back, go watch the episode, and then pick up where we left off here. And of course, the Geek Buddies are going to do an episode, possibly live, going on Monday. So just letting you know. But I wanted to react to this in real time tonight and have a little fun talking about it. My God, got to tell you right off the bat, I loved it. Loved the episode. Absolutely enjoyed it. Look, the entire season has been, in essence, a soap opera, for lack of a better term. And it was a lot of people moving around, all these different pieces. There wasn't a lot of action this entire season, yet it felt like you were living through a lot of action because you were sitting on the edge of your seat wondering who was going to do what, when, to who, and who was going to survive, who was not going to survive, and how were allegiances going to shift as the season went along, as we went through these time jumps, dealing with new actresses coming in to play these roles, dealing with some people aging in horrible ways and some people not aging at all throughout this whole thing. So just a lot to explore in this entire season. And I thought this finale did an incredible job of dealing with everything that happened in season 9, laying the groundwork for all we see here in episode 10 in this finale. Let's start with Rhaenyra. We see Rhaenyra talking to Lucerys at the beginning of the episode. It's going to mirror what she's going to say to Lucerys later on in the episode as well. So this idea of him questioning whether he should be in charge of Driftmark, saying, you know, I don't have the guts, I don't like water, I can't swim, it's not really my jam. And he says he's not as perfect as Rhaenyra. And Rhaenyra says to him, I'm not as perfect as you think, which of course is true. And with what we know about Rhaenyra's track record of having children out of wedlock and making certain decisions out of a place of privilege, or because she can, because she's the king's daughter, those kinds of things come forward here in her mind when she says that. I think Emma does a really great job playing those levels as she's responding to her son and saying, I'm not as perfect as you think I am. But she talks about duty, this idea of duty and respecting what you've been essentially tasked with, what your destiny is. Your destiny chooses you. You don't choose your destiny. So you have to respect that. And so she's trying to encourage him, trying to give him some strength and some belief in himself that he's got to do what's right here. So it's very, very similar to how Viserys rules. There's a duty here. I have to do this. It is my job. I cannot shirk my duty. Rhaenyra feels the same way. Even when she questions things, she knows that her father has given this to her, this responsibility to her, this song of ice and fire. She is the one that's going to bring peace to the realm, or so she thinks, because Viserys has told her that and given her that power. So that's where she's coming from when she's talking to Lucerys, trying to buck him up and give him some strength here to deal with what he's going through. He's a young man. He's a young kid. He's going to have to learn to deal with this kind of stuff, at least at this point in the episode, because we don't know what was going to happen to him later on in the episode. So great back and forth here, mother to son. I think it's really powerful. And then Rhaenys comes in and tells Rhaenyra everything with Daemon there, and tells her about the death of her father, tells her about Alicent putting her son on the throne. This is all news to Rhaenyra, and she processes it in this really, just emotionally gripping way. Losing your father, losing your throne, but also losing the prophecy of her father, because her father said that she was the one that was going to sit on the throne. So it's a double whammy here. It isn't just losing her father, it's losing essentially her father's last wishes, which was to have her sit on that throne. This isn't from a selfish place. It's from an honor and a respect, a duty to her father. Yet again, this is running throughout this whole episode. It is all there in how Rhaenyra reacts to this. Of course, Daemon, because he's the emotional one, and I think this is also a very powerful through line running through this episode, is how the men are the ones being emotional, and the women are the ones looking at this with a bigger picture, who are preaching restraint, who are trying to understand how to do this in the best possible way, so that the kingdom is in essence isn't left in essence in ash and bone because of people's anger and emotional responses. So we see Rhaenyra be, coming from a place of restraint here throughout this scene here, and dealing with what she's dealing with. Then we cut to her dealing with the fact that her baby comes, because her baby starts to come as she's processing this insane news. Daemon thinks the Viserys has been poisoned or slain, and wants to go after them, wants to go after Alicent and Otto and all of them, and certainly wants to encourage that to happen. Rhaenys, also practicing restraint, has the back and forth with Rhaenyra, but eventually Rhaenyra starts to have her baby, and we cut to the scene where she is like having this child in such horrible pain and such difficulty. She does not want the maester's help. She does not want the midwife's help. She's going to do it on her own, but there's this struggle. And as this struggle is happening, there's a lot of symbolism happening here, because also we see the kids, her two children, like battling each other out on the beach. And we see Rhaenys come up and call them to come talk to Rhaenyra, and we see Daemon kind of lining things up in a separate room above the map that we saw there at the beginning of the episode. He is trying to line up all his military, and he's the one kind of taking control here, thinking he's the one, just like a man just coming in, taking control. He's in essence doing what Alicent did, which is usurping Rhaenyra's authority by him taking control of the situation and want to put things in motion, because he's a dude and that's what he wants to do. And so, we see the patriarchal society that she's existing in still, Rhaenyra, even though she is essentially the queen in waiting. She tells Jacaerys that he should not do anything, and no one should do anything without her approval and consent. So no one should be running off to start a war or doing anything. Once again, practicing restraint. This is very important throughout this episode. But we see her having this baby, and it is just a brutal birth, for God's sakes. And sadly, the child comes out and is a stillborn child. The child is dead when it comes out of her womb. And there's a lot of symbolism here, right? Is this the birth of her reign being essentially killed in the womb before it starts? Is it by what Alicent did? Is this the birth? Is this stillborn birth? Maybe where her marriage to Daemon is now going? Is it possibly dead? Because we see throughout this episode that they are going to butt heads about how things should be done here in response to what Alicent did. So we see that. Is that the symbolism there? Is this a portent of what's going to happen to Lucerys? Because by the end of the episode, Lucerys is killed. So in essence, is this a bit of a foreshadowing of what's going to happen to Lucerys? So there's a lot of symbolism to take here. Or is her enduring this pain, enduring the blood loss, enduring the struggle here by herself, a mirror of what she is going to do as she engages in the civil war by the end of the episode, when she's made a resolute decision to take part in the civil war now? Is this what's going to happen? Is there going to be blood shed? Is there going to be some deaths? All of that here. So there's a lot of symbolism to take from this moment, which I think is fantastic and well done. Oh, and also while this is going on, we see Daemon take those two Kingsguard soldiers there and has them pledge their loyalty to Rhaenyra, as Caraxes is there right around the rock waiting to set them on fire if they don't. So certainly ruling by intimidation. That is Daemon's way, whereas Rhaenyra's way is more of trying to get you to see the reason and the logic of following her. Again, this difference of approach, which mirrors what Otto and Alicent were doing in episode 9, right? Otto wanted to rule by getting Aegon, finding Aegon, getting him to kill all of Rhaenyra and her children and Daemon and everybody, so that there would be no question to the legitimacy. And I made a case on the Geek Buddies review that he wasn't wrong in his approach necessarily, because that's probably the one that would lead to the least bloodshed, possibly. But it is also the more brutal approach, and the scarier approach, and the approach meant to intimidate. Whereas Alicent was much more circumspect, wanted to give Rhaenyra a chance to bend the knee, a chance to kind of choose not to pursue this civil war or pursue her being heir to the throne and let Aegon sit on the throne. Here, the same thing. Rhaenyra is practicing restraint. Rhaenyra is the one using logic. Rhaenyra is the one that is understanding there's a bigger picture here because she's led by a prophecy, whereas Daemon is led by his own emotions. Again, the idea of a man being emotional trying to rule versus a woman being emotional trying to rule, that old negative chestnut that is not applicable in real life at all, for God's sakes. That's such a stupid narrative. Men can be just as stupidly emotional. Certainly, we've seen that. The history is littered with emotional male leaders who caused massive bloodshed, not just to their enemies, but to their own people as well. So all of that is here running through this as she's having this baby. And she even caresses her dead baby. She dresses her dead baby. And we see that they set fire to the baby on the throne as a burial ritual, very similar to how Viserys's rule had the death of his wife there. They're having to bury her. So, and the writers, the creators rather, of the show were saying how this is kind of a mirror thing that they wanted to have, this kind of connective tissue running through it. But as this is happening in this really sad moment, we see Eric walk up, Eric with an E, walk up, and he pledges his allegiance to the queen and then pulls out Viserys's crown, which Daemon takes and rubs the Targaryen symbols that are on it as a way of connecting maybe back to his brother. And he puts the crown on Rhaenyra's head, and she is now officially the queen. They all bend the knee to her except for Rhaenys, because Rhaenys has not decided which way her house is going to go, so she can't bend the knee just yet. She's keeping that distance there, and I think she looks badass in the crown. I think Rhaenyra looks absolutely badass in the crown. We cut to preparations being laid for the impending war. Rhaenyra walks in with her guard, and there's a different air about her now. She's a little not necessarily sure, but there's still a steel and a strength to her. She comes in, she brings in Baela, and she wants to hear what the men around the table, this woman leading these men who are ready to lay down their lives and fight in this battle. She is getting the briefings and understanding what's going on. And Daemon counters with all this talk about dragons and say they have 13 dragons. There's wild dragons. There's dragons that haven't been mounted yet, or dragons that haven't kind of connected with a Targaryen yet. So there's resources here. And Rhaenyra, once again, more logical, counters Daemon's emotional approach to this and says, well, none of our dragons have been to war, and that's going to matter. And experience in war matters in these situations. So she's trying to get him to see logic, trying to get him to see that there's a more intelligent, bigger picture approach to this. Rhaenyra asks Rhaenys about the stake, about Corlys, Lord Corlys, and Rhaenys informs her and Daemon that Corlys will make the decision when he arrives at Dragonstone. She cannot make the decision for them, but when she says that Corlys is arriving at Dragonstone, Daemon tries to bully her in essence by saying he will pledge his loyalty to the queen. Rhaenys gives him a look that would wither most human beings and says that Corlys will make that decision when he arrives, essentially emasculating Daemon yet again. But Rhaenyra counters Daemon right in front of him, using a different approach, much more respect to Rhaenys. Speaking about, hey, we will await his decision. We will pray for his safe arrival as we prayed for the fever to break for him. So just reminding her of the service that she has done, her people have done, to try to make sure that Corlys survives this fever, or that the fever breaks. And then we hear that a ship is sighted. This ship, we find out, is Otto Hightower, who is showing up here, representative of Alicent and Aegon, and Daemon is waiting for him. And this, of course, is very reminiscent of we had a few episodes ago when it was Rhaenyra showing up, a younger Rhaenyra showing up with her dragon to confront Daemon and Mysaria, and because Daemon had taken one of the dragon's eggs there for himself, claiming that he should be king, claiming that he's going to have a new wife and new children, blah, blah, blah. And we saw it. So very reminiscent of that. And once again, Rhaenyra shows up on her dragon there when Otto says he has to deliver the message to Rhaenyra and Rhaenyra only. She shows up, jumps off the dragon, walks through everybody without looking at them, then turns around. They have the back and forth. Otto proposes to Rhaenyra, like, look, your son will keep Dragonstone, keep all the lands around Dragonstone. Viserys will take over Driftmark and all the lands of the Valerians have, and that will be passed on to his heirs. So he's essentially saying, just kind of bow to the king, or forget your claim to the throne, and your family will be fine. We'll leave you alone. You leave us alone. We'll take care of Daemon's kids. We'll put them there in high positions in the court to carry on cups or whatever and do the things that they want them to do. Daemon is mad about this. Daemon just says, I'd rather feed my kids to the dragons than have them do that. And so once again, reacting emotionally, reacting much more off the cuff there. And Rhaenyra, in essence, after Otto gives this whole approach and says all the things that he says, she gets mad. She walks over to Otto, rips off his pin for Hand of the King, throws it in the water, and says he is no more Hand of the King as Aegon is king, essentially calling him illegitimate now, and calls him a traitor. So it's a very strong moment there. And just when you think it's going to end in sour terms, Otto calls up the Grand Maester, brings up this piece of paper, hands it to Rhaenyra, and it is that page from the book that they were studying, Alicent and Rhaenyra, a few episodes ago. At least I think that's what it is, when they were young. So it's that connective tissue, and Otto says that Alicent has not forgotten their friendship. So a very important moment, a very powerful moment for them. And everybody, and Daemon says he's sick of this, sick of waiting around. He wants to go, and the tension ratchets up. And who stops them from going at it? Rhaenyra, once again, showing her restraint, once again, showing the smarter move, also appreciating the connection with Alicent, and says, you'll have our answer in the morning. And then we cut to Daemon and Rhaenyra discussing dragons. Rhaenyra reminds him that when the dragons fought in the last war, they burned everything to the ground. She does not want to be the queen of ash and bone. Lord Bartimaeus asks if she is considering the terms from Otto Hightower and Queen Alicent. And she brings up an intelligent conundrum. She says it's her responsibility as queen to maintain the peace and unity, or to sit on the throne at all costs. And certainly the sitting on the throne at all costs is what leads to all these deaths and murders and wars and battles. And in essence, she's saying, I don't want to do that. I want to be the one that brings peace and unity. So again, a much more circumspect, a much more bigger approach to things, a smarter approach to things, a more logical approach to things, a less impersonal approach to things. And I like that. That's a smarter move when you're ruling. So it's very interesting. But Daemon counters her by saying the Greens have already declared war, when Rhaenyra says, I'm not going to make the first move. I'm not going to declare war. I'm not going to get into this war. And Daemon's telling her they already started this war by putting Aegon on the throne. He screams, asking her what she's going to do about it. She clears the room, and they have this back and forth. Rhaenyra and Daemon debate what they should do. She's approaching it from a calm place. He is approaching a place of emotion. She says her responsibility is bigger because of the Song of Ice and Fire. She's led by this prophecy because of her father. Her father gave her this prophecy. So she has a bigger responsibility than Daemon could possibly consider or understand. And Daemon grabs her by the throat. Now, in this moment, you immediately think, okay, this is bad Daemon. This is evil Daemon doing this. And of course, it's a terrible thing to grab a woman by her throat in. That's just a horrible thing. But it's also, if you look at the analysis of it, because he's an impotent person, because he can't get it up or he can't do the things that he does, and he's emasculated throughout this whole series, this is his way of trying to reclaim some kind of power in the relationship with Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra is now queen. And he's the one that crowned her. But she's not willing to run off to start a war, in essence, do his bidding or follow what his logic is. She walks a different path, and that frustrates him. So in that moment, when he grabs her by the throat, he's trying to reclaim a certain kind of power. He's an asshole for doing it, but he's trying to reclaim some semblance of power in this situation, in this relationship. He essentially badmouths Viserys, saying he came up with all stories and portents to validate himself being king, which is, of course, still his jealousy that Daemon wasn't put on the throne. And that leads to this back and forth where he eventually lets go of her throat, and she says that she is guided by a different prophecy, by this prophecy of ice and fire. And then she realizes that Daemon was never told about this by Viserys. And that, of course, would have to be true because Daemon worked so hard to delegitimize Viserys being king. And certainly Viserys had to deal with a lot of shit from Daemon in the whole process of his reign. So it's no surprise that Viserys wouldn't give him the prophecy. And I wrote down, this is an assault on the queen. This is treason in essence. So, we'll see how that plays out. And we got to Corlys here waking up at Dragonstone and coming to making a joke or trying to make a joke with Rhaenys. Rhaenys ain't having it. She said, "You left me when we needed you the most. You left us all. We lost our sons, and you left me and your grandchildren when we needed you the most because you wanted to run off and live out your fantasies and have fights." Very Star Wars-esque, right? If you've read the stuff with Leia and Han Solo and how Han Solo dealt with Ben going to the dark side, he went off and became a smuggler all over again. So very similar to that, running off to do what you want to do or what you think you do best so that you can forget about the pain. He says, "I ran off because I just couldn't deal with it." And she's like, we lost people, not you lost people. We lost people, and you weren't even here for your grandchildren. And then she tells him about Vayman, which is a really great moment of acting by Steve Toussaint there, processing that truth, and then understands that it was because his brother's arrogance that ended up leading to Daemon cutting his head off. He's not even mad at Daemon for doing it. He understands that Vayman was driven by this kind of thing, and he realizes in that moment that he is done pursuing the crown, or the Iron Throne rather, because that is what has led to all this death in his life and his family. That says, "Rhaenys, you were right about everything, and maybe there's going to be some kind of peace." Rhaenys says, we have to kind of look at this possibility of swearing allegiance to Rhaenyra. And Corlys rejects it initially because he's like, "What this woman destroys everything she does. Everything gets in her atmosphere, gets destroyed by her." And Rhaenys counters, "This girl is holding the realm together by not giving into her emotions, by showing restraint." And I saw some people complaining that this is something Rhaenys wouldn't do. And of course, that doesn't make any sense. Of course she would. Rhaenys is a political animal. She understands what the right move is almost 99% of the time that we've seen her in the show. She understands what the move is. Yes, a few episodes ago, she was willing to maybe consider not supporting Rhaenyra and what have you, but then Vayman pulled what he pulled, and Viserys essentially hobbled his way up to the Iron Throne and laid down his ruling on this whole situation at Driftmark, and Rhaenys pivoted and supported Rhaenyra's children being in charge of Driftmark. So there's a kind of thing here that goes on with Rhaenys, that she's smart in the political maneuvering, and I love that. Cut to Rhaenys and Corlys walking in to talk to Rhaenyra, who is looking over this map. Daemon isn't there. Corlys realizes they do not have enough allies to win the war and they need more houses. He declares for her there. She thanks him, but also says she needs to know who her allies are before she sends them off to war. Again, much more intelligent approach, much more reasoned approach to all of this. Corlys then reveals to her that he won this war, that he went to fight, and they now have control of the Stepstones, and that the Narrow Sea is there. He says if they can seal the gullet, they can cut off all seaborne travel and trade to King's Landing. Rhaenys offers to take Meleys and patrol the gullet herself. So Rhaenys wanting to actually get in the fight on Rhaenyra's side, not just sit in the castle and support her from afar. Lord Bartimaeus says they can drain the Narrow Sea, surround the Red Keep, lay siege to King's Landing to force the Greens to surrender. So right now, it seems like they've got plans finally in motion. Everybody's in sync here to make this happen in a logical way. Rhaenyra says they need to secure the support of Winterfell, the Eyrie, and Storm's End. And Jacaerys steps forward and says him and Lucerys should deliver these messages on their dragons, because those will get there quicker than ravens, and they're much more intimidating than ravens. And we see her as a mom, Rhaenyra, kind of understanding that her children are growing up. They're becoming young men and wanting to take the reins and wanting to take part in this situation and in this political landscape. They want to take part and help their mother in this situation, their queen, in essence, in this situation. She agrees Jacaerys is going to go to the north to Arryn and then to Winterfell to make a treaty with Lord Cragen Stark there for the north. Lucerys is going to fly south to Storm's End and treat with Lord Boros. She reminds them that if they take these errands, they go as messengers, not as warriors. They must not take part in any fighting. She makes them swear that they will not fight and do whatever. She tells Jace about Cragen Stark and their possible common interest. Luce is told about Lord Boros, and she's trying to make him confident they can do this, which mirrors the scene at the beginning of the episode. This idea that her needing to buck up her son, needing to give her son some confidence, some strength here, as he's going to things that he's going to do the things that he's going to do. She sends them off as the dragons fly away. We cut to Daemon walking on his own, singing the old Valerian there, and there's Vermithor. My God, what a scene. And for those of you who've read the book, you know why he's going to mount Vermithor, what that's going to lead to for sure. So they leave that for season 2. We got to Luce landing on Storm's End with Araxes. and he sees Vagar is there. So Vagar is in essence in the driveway, which means Aemon is there. He walks in, delivers the message to Lord Boris Baratheon, who cannot read apparently, and Grand Maester reads the message, tells him the basic cliff notes of the message, and Boris does not like this. Lord Boris says, look, Aemon showed up here and offered to marry one of my daughters. Are you going to marry one of my daughters? And he's like, no, I'm already promised to someone else. But he will deliver the message back to the queen. And before he can leave the chamber there, Aemon steps forward and challenges Lucerys and says, why don't you take out your own eye as payment for my eye? So clearly some bitterness there from Aemon that's still around. And he goes to attack Lucerys, who is not intimidated by Aemon. He reaches for his sword with a bit of a smirk on his face. And Lord Boris stops them from fighting in there. And then we end up outside. Sure enough, a fantastic dragon chase scene ensues, and then out of nowhere, Vagar comes, much to Aemon's chagrin. Aemon is trying to stop Vagar from going after him. He knows Vagar is pissed. He's trying to make him listen. Vagar won't listen. They get in there above the clouds, and Vagar eventually kills Lucerys. And Aemon knows that they've crossed the line. And the look on his face, he knows they've crossed the line that there's no going back from. That killing one of Rhaenyra's children, who is in essence in line for the throne eventually, if things were to happen to people in front of him, is even more of an insult to Rhaenyra here. So the look on his face tells you everything you need to know, that he knows he's in trouble for this. And then we cut to a slow motion walking of Daemon going to tell Rhaenyra what happened. Rhaenyra is just incredible here. The way this is shot, and once again, I want to give so much credit to Greg Yaitanis for shooting the way he shot this. It is from behind, a slow pan. Daemon comes in slow motion. They hold hands as they walk away from the table as he's telling her the news there. And then she lets go of his hand, stands solo, as she will be standing solo as a queen. And then she turns, and the look on her face, my Lord, the look on her face, that is not a look you ever want to get from anybody in your life, and especially from any women in your life, because that means all the restraints are down, all the doors are open, and the shit is going to hit the fan, and everything is going to be burnt to the ground. Such a powerful moment of acting from Emma Darcy. She was an MVP of this entire episode. She's delivering so many layers and so much complexity to her performance, and we see that throughout. Like, everybody in this thing was fantastic. And Eve Best was so good. Steve Desant, of course, Matt Smith, the kids, everybody, even Risha Ifans in that scene there on the bridge as Otto Hightower, delivering a fantastic performance to really bring this finale to life. I don't have anything to nitpick about this. All of this made sense. All of this is logical. All of the construction of this episode, the emotional journey of Rhaenyra in this episode, where she comes to by the end of this episode, it all makes sense, and it's all built correctly as we get to the end. And it's a very satisfying end. We got a while to go until season 2 shows up, but there is so much to enjoy and savor in this season already. So season 2 hopefully picks up where this one leaves off in terms of the quality and approach, and we get an even more dynamic season 2 as this Dance of the Dragons really starts kicking in. We'll see where they pick up. We'll see if they pick up a few years later. We'll see if they pick up immediately after this situation. We'll see where they're going to pick up to start season 2, to see where we are in this war between these two factions here vying for the Iron Throne. So just fantastic stuff overall. The writing, the direction, the cinematography, the acting, all of it works so well. I give it like a 9 cowboy hats out of 10 cowboy hats, if I can use that rating system for this thing, which I loved. And I wonder what you all think. Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Did you get what you needed out of this thing? Did you want to see more? Did the decisions by these characters, did they make sense to you in the way it's been constructed and how we've seen these characters behave in previous episodes? Did all that work for you, or did some things not work for you? Let me know if I'm missing something that I should be giving a little more of an evil eye to, or maybe exploring to see why they made that decision because it didn't make sense. Let me know down there in the comment section below. Always love reading y'all's comments. You make me think about things in a different way, or if I've missed something, you kind of tie it up to the overall point about the episode, which I think is always great. So let me know down there in the comment section below. Hit a like on this video, share it on your social media, put that hashtag the Outlaw Nation on it. And speaking of the Outlaw Nation, please make sure you subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, so as you know we're dropping all the content we do here on the Outlaw Nation channel. Head on over to Twitch, follow me there, the Outlaw Nation, all one word. and the Patreon, patreon.com/John Rocha. Maybe I'll get me a dragon if enough of you support me there. We shall see. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. I'm going to bed. And I'll talk and look for our Geek Buddy spoiler review for this coming out. We may be doing it Monday live. So just look for that news on my social media. And y'all take care of yourselves. Be well. It's been a hell of a season 1. I hate to see it go. We're going to have to wait for a while for season 2, but it was a hell of a ride. Certainly fun now to go back and binge the entire season and get even more out of the way this thing was constructed for sure. All right. I'll talk to you next time with another brand new review video here on the Outlaw Nation.